Welcome everyone to our AI Assistant webinar. We're happy to have you here. I know that we've had a couple webinars lately about new features, it's exciting to continue to innovate here over at OneDose. Our mission is to advance the first mile of healthcare by equipping every emergency clinician, agency, and hospital with intelligent AI-powered support that improves accuracy, saves time, and saves lives. Our speakers today are going to be Tristan Hazlett, CEO and co-founder here at OneDose, Colton Hazlett, CTO and co-founder here at OneDose, and Chris Wahosky, paramedic EMS liaison at SSM Health in St. Louis. So I'm going to pass this over to Tristan and we'll just jump straight in.
All right. Well, everyone, it's honestly a pleasure to be having this conversation. Out of all the webinars I've done, this one has a very special place in my heart because it's definitely been the longest developed project we've ever done. Just giving you a little background, the AI that we're going to be talking about today really became possible to do this beginning to middle of last year, and we've been developing this ever since. And as things continue to progress from the first iteration of this AI technology that these frontier large language models are pushing out, we know that healthcare, and rightfully so, is not going to be the first instance in which it comes out and starts affecting. We know that it takes time and quality and everything that we need to do in order to get it ready for something that's so critical and needs to be ready for, used in all those different edge cases. Um, so we're going to talk a little about the OneDose AI assistant and what we developed and how we got here. But first, I think it's important to kind of give an idea of why we thought this was worth spending the better part of a year building, right? This is a lot of resources for a company like us to do so. And I think the best scenario that we can describe is just like an ideal world versus the real world, right? In an ideal world, every EMS professional, every doctor recalls everything perfectly and can do so in the heat of the moment in emergency situations. But in the real world, in emergency situations, people make mistakes. People have cognitive gaps. People's adrenaline's up. Their fight or flight instincts are there. And I mean, that's the definition of an emergency situation, is that it's not something that people experience a lot. And with that stress up, there are memory gaps and there are cognitive gaps, from simple things such as medication calculations to more complex things such as, what's my escalation pathway for this medication? Um, and in EMS, it has a special place in our heart with this because they're in the field. This isn't in a hospital. This isn't with the structures support around it. This is in the back of an ambulance, with a medic maybe driving the ambulance, or with an EMT up in the front. And the ability to bounce things back and forth from people obviously is just limited depending upon the situation that you may or may not find yourself in. So our goal with this project, and why we thought it was worth devoting so many resources to, was to give the medic a second pair of eyes, right? To give someone like an assistant, a co-pilot, or representative of someone like a captain would be on scene, in the heat of the moment, and without having to increase hiring on budget constraints department. Chris, you've actually used this in the field, um, and obviously have a better idea of what these gaps kind of feel like on a personal level. How do you see this AI assistant kind of fill in this gap, and or just addressing, what gaps that you see in your practice?
Yeah, I think it's in EMS, obviously we don't lack the knowledge necessarily. We lack time, margin for error, and sometimes need that second set of eyes. So it doesn't replace the paramedic, doesn't replace that decision making. I think it just reassures that paramedic when that high pressure situation is applied, and then your guessing is most likely, and you take some of that heavy cognitive load off of there. So I think that helps utilizing that, especially pre-planning going to the call, things like that, where maybe you don't have somebody, a second paramedic in there, or you just have a driver in some states. But every calculation, you don't have to do it in your head. You have this resource, and an opportunity is less likely to happen for air there. So it's not necessarily convenient; it's safety.
Thanks, Chris. And honestly, I think the most important question isn't, what we kind of went over. It's how can we build this to where it's safe, right? As we all know, AI does things that can be wild, right? And early AI is hallucinated all the time. It pulls from places. You might put in a PDF and get 10 right answers, and then the 11th answer is some reference to some pre-Vietnam era paramedicine, right? And it just pulls stuff from the random places. So to kind of talk about how we built this to be first and foremost safe and bounded in clinical paramedic practice, I brought our CTO, Colton, who has been in charge of building this for over the year, involved in every part of the process. It's not just him on the team, but he's the big reason why it is where it is today. So, Colton, I'll kind of pass it off to you and tell us why this is safe to use in EMS and why we think this is, going to continue building towards something really cool.
Yeah, appreciate that, Tristan. Um, that's right. So I'm the CTO. I've been leading this project along with two other people now for a couple of months. And the best part about this is that we find that EMS is really a great application of this AI technology. And the reason for that is the medical direction is scoped in practice. So there is a limitation to how many inputs that it can actually surface. So it doesn't need to scope over the entire web to formulate a response. It's all applied. There's two ways that you can really interface with our OneDose AI assistant, and we've seen just from having it be in the field released now for a month that the number one way that everyone has been utilizing it is really with voice. And we only see that going to be growing because people just want to quickly interface with their medical direction and not have to take off their dirty gloves to type on their screen and really get into a mobile application in order just to surface one quick question. But now on to the conversation about the safety aspect of it. The number one thing that we have is obviously, since it is scoped, we can pull a direct source for every single response that it gets. So if there is not a direct source, we also have internal safeguards and flags in place so that it'll alert you and let you know so that it will not even give you a response, and it'll indicate that it is not found in your medical direction to give you that response. Every one of these questions get graded in real time as well. So after we have those initial safeguards where it already needs a direct source, it regrades itself and then gives you a visual indicator of whether it dictated as clinically relevant as well. Lastly, it will not hallucinate. It's very strict on being able to pull directly from your medical direction, and it will always say that it is not directly available and directly in your medical direction. Now going into another really key aspect of our assistant, which is there's two types of data sets. So there's your structured pre-approved in your OneDose application that's already been analyzed, and that would be your medication dosages, your infusion dosages, and your electrical shocks that can just be quickly surfaced. So we've actually been able to parse out a lot of the information from the question itself. So what we've seen is a lot of the questions are just a quick dose reference. So a lot of providers just want to know, what is my medication dosage for X in this protocol Y? So you're actually able to pre-index all that information before it even hits an AI. Because of that, the accuracy and safety factor of it has been able to be rapidly increased as well. Now that we've talked more about the safety aspect of it and kind of talking about how it all works, Why don't we just go ahead and jump into a quick demonstration and give you a visual indicator of actually seeing the assistant. So I'll share my screen. All right, can you use my screen? And then this is a perfect application. I'll show you the two use cases, which is that structured response where it's just a really quick reference. And then another example that Chris already brought up is once you're going on to scene, you can have that protocol be summarized to you prior to being seen. So everything is fresh on top of the mind once you get into these stressful situations. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just go up here to this Ask Me Anything and then go into our AI assistant. I'll start with a relatively simple structured question, and this would land into that structured format. So what it's already going to be able to do is it knows that it needs fentanyl, and it knows right away on the indication it's referring to the pain management, or in this case, analgesic protocol. Based on that, it's able to extrapolate all that information. You can also have it just directly tell it which patient that you're dealing with. That's P 20 kilos. And then it'll actually go through and recalculate those dosages directly for you. And then lastly, you can say that you're giving, if you know the administration route, you can actually document directly in the assistant itself as well. Administer.in dose. So it's able to pick up from the previous context and then administer that documentation. Now we'll go into the other summary that Chris brought up, which is responding and summarizing that protocol prior to being at scene. So I'll keep in that pediatric patient, and then this will be able to pick up that 5-year-old portion of it as well. So I'm saying I'm responding to a 5-year-old 20-kilo pediatric patient, and the chief complaint is a seizure. Can you summarize that protocol for me? A big application of this is when you're going to scene, having this be on that voice mode so that it's actually able to play over in that voice mode on the speakers as well. So it goes through every aspect and then gives you all the sources of where it directly pulled all this information from, along with, in this case, this one actually has multiple concentrations. But now expanding back and bringing it back to Chris, he can talk about some more real world applications about his usage that he's been doing over the past month.
Yeah, so we've been using this, and I've utilized it where you're asking it questions, and it doesn't really replace that paramedic. You still remain the decision maker. It just kind of confirms that whether it's accuracy, whether it's a protocol alignment, and how we're utilizing it works really good. And it does have some ambient AI, even though it's a grounded protocol based logic where it pulls that source. Say if I want to know what it is, that 5 year old patient is, and we just did some drowning at the pool with some of our local responders, paramedics, firefighters, EMTs, everything. Even the police officers were in there, and it picks it up very well going to those patients. It
Oh,
doesn't
Tristan,
really
you're on mute.
it doesn't really ramble on either. When you're asking it questions, it's very specific. So when you need that protocol, if there's a variation or anything, you just want to do that, or you needed, say, that patient, it realizes that memory of that 5 year old, and then you can continue it on. And we got some pretty edgy cases with these that we threw at it. So I've been throwing a lot of stuff at this thing just to get it. But we're coming up with some good features, and I think good updates coming along on the road too.
Awesome. And yeah, Chris, so I think for a newer paramedic, which does happen a lot, I'm pretty sure the average churn rate for a paramedic in the US here is close to about 2 years. So there's a lot of new medics coming in, and this clearly kind of helps fill some potential knowledge gaps or recalling information. But for even an experienced medic like yourself, someone that, you know, knows your protocols like the back of your hand, I wouldn't be surprised if you even helped wrote them at SSM there. Um, How is this useful for you?
Well, it is, and a lot of times when I want it, I don't need the whole protocol. Being 30 years in, I just need the quick. Okay, tell me what this piece that I need, whether it's the fentanyl dose. I don't need the whole protocol, but the long version is there for the newer paramedic that wants some, you know, reduction and that improved safety of can I be confident in what I'm treating this patient as? And even going, just being familiar with that protocol, testing, compliance, QA, QI. It's predictable. It's a process that you can do every time going to the call. And then by the time you're at your 2 year mark, you know these protocols like the back of your hand too.
That's great. And have you guys utilized it at all for documentation yet? Just making sure you timestamp stuff properly, or has it not quite reached that point of your workflow?
We've not quite reached that for our workflow yet, but I is able to document it in the OneDose app itself, where it will save it and archive it, and then they'll take it back into the reporting system. So we're not using the API integration yet, per se, but we are utilizing it where it's time stamping it. We want to know when the epi's given, when the fentanyl was given, or a procedure was done, going through those checklists, things like that. And we're still building a lot of that out as well, and we just are constantly improving it. I touch this thing every single day.
That's awesome. And are you using it for trainings as well? I think you might have mentioned some of that already.
Yeah, 100%. Anytime we do any training whatsoever, we can always reference this and reference that protocol, so that they understand it, because that even are experienced that have maybe worked at multiple agencies. This is a great reference tool, and your protocol is digital right there, where you don't have to have a full, 200-page document PDF in front of you. Because ours is, I think, like 268 pages. So it's something crazy. And you got that right at your fingertips. And then you can specifically ask it what you want, and you only need that one PDF. So it's great for summarizing it.
That's awesome. And yeah, let's dive into the other side of things as well. Obviously, this is kind of first of its kind technology, leveraging large language models. As we talked about before, healthcare kind of lags behind the technological advancements for good reasons because it takes time to QA QI things that are going to be used for patients. What are some of the limitations you're seeing with this right now?
So it's got some good little ambient AI, even though it's grounded within that protocol. Doesn't go too far out of that realm. But the limitations, I found that when you're in, say, a cardiac arrest, or you get in those edgy cases, I have a seizure that went into cardiac arrest, and then you're doing multiple things, and you've shocked them twice, and you want to know the round of epi or giving my first antidysrhythmic, and you start asking that, it starts to, I don't want to say ramble, but then it starts to lose its traction of which direction to handle, because it's trying to pull from every single protocol that I'm asking it in real time. Again, it's not to replace that paramedic. That paramedic still has to be the decision maker. But again, we're multitaskers. So we're thinking 11 different things, and it's trying to keep up with those 11 different things. And sometimes it can have its challenge. But I think you have some new updates based on some of the feedback I've been giving you and how we can improve it.
Of course, yeah. I think it's really important to remember, and I think a lot of these big companies out there, like OpenAI, keep saying this as well. This is the worst as it's going to be, right? This is the first release. We were focused on safety in this one. We wanted to make sure that it's not going to hallucinate answers. We wanted to make sure that the quality of the product that we're putting out there is up to snuff. But the real question is how can we start tackling some more of these workflow questions, right? And I think that's just what you described there, is that. In EMS, there's no such thing as the same call twice, right? You might see a lot of the same things, but you're going to different places. Um, you're doing different things. You have different challenges, different scene, and building out that workflow and those edge cases is definitely where we're going to be continuing to gather a lot of data and prioritize that on there too. Um, as we think about where this is going, I get really excited because, the more data that this solution has to process, the better advice and the better kind of support it can give you. So Colton, do you have any kind of updates for us of where we think the V2 or the next changes of this assistant are headed?
Yeah, so just off of the first month of feedback, working with our customers, so far we're very aware that it's very conversational in nature, and conversational is not necessarily best application when you're dealing with a patient, and it's assuming that you're talking to the assistant itself. So V2, we're already actively working on, and we see it being in two different aspects. So one, just like if you're working with another paramedic, chief, or anyone else on scene, a lot of the times you would address who you're speaking to. So we're actually going to be building that into the assistant itself. So instead of always listening and assuming that you're having a conversation with it, it'll be more prompt based, where you can actually address, hey, I want you to search my medical for this protocol or this medication dosage. And then along with that is more all of an AI LLM is as good as the context that it has with it. So really building out that context so it knows which protocols the providers have viewed, the patient inputs, interventions that have been going on with it, all being able to factor in into the question that the paramedic is actually actively asking. The next stage of this that we really see us going into is more ambient in nature as well, so that you can keep it on while having that prompt in nature to know it's a direct question. The benefit of that is because there is that documentation portion of it, it will actually be able to track those interventions directly back to that NEMSIS correlated values.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I think everyone here on this call and in medicine in general is ready for a world in which you don't have to fill out paperwork. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but if we do, it's going to be kind of a mixture between probably directed conversation and ambient. And the reason I can say that so confidently is because that's how humans have conversations. So Colton, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to kind of have you share your screen again of that window of the OneDose app and pull up that most recent conversation where it had you summarize the whole protocol set. Because I would love to show a little bit about what we mean when we say that the AI is grounded in your protocol set that you're doing.
Yeah, and while Colton is pulling that up, just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions that you want answered, you can send them in the chat and we can answer them at the end of the call as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So pull to that most recent one. All right. And you want to walk through kind of what happens when you click on those tiles and the difference between a deep research, which is summarizes protocol for me, would be more of a deep research, and a quick reference, which is like that medication dose on there.
Yeah, so because OneDose is already built in a way where we extract all your medications out and we already have every single one of your fentanyl medications for all those key indications of when you would actually utilize this, it makes getting surfacing those quick reference, which is just a quick medication dose, super simple because it's already all saved on the device itself. Now jumping into that point that you're making, where it breaks down that summary and really summarizes the entire protocol. If you wanted to perform deep research for you, what it does is it breaks down into multiple questions instead of just taking this one question. So it'll formulate 6 different questions to explore the protocol set. Which interventions do I need for this protocol? What equipment items do I need? Is there any vital signs that I should be regulating? Uh, is there any key indications, contraindications that are relevant for this protocol itself? So it's able to extrapolate all those, break all those down into multiple questions, and then formulate a response all on that. And going into each one of these cards, they're completely grounded in the application, which means if I just wanted to now say take over and just jump to the seizures protocol, I can click on this medication dosage and it'll bring me right to it. At any point, you can continue on the application like normal, where you can slide over and see where this direct source of information came from in the first place. I'll
Yeah,
jump
that's
back.
awesome.
Yeah.
One point I will like to make on this, as you're seeing how this is built on top of OneDose, is one solution isn't enough. And what do I mean by that? I mean, AI itself isn't enough either. If you would just upload your protocols into this reg-based system, right? And even if you grounded all the answers and do everything that we do on here just as well as we do it, you're still going to miss out on a lot of those workflow cognitive offloading things that OneDose does. So if you scroll up, and I'm just going to give the most simplest example of this. When Colton clicked into this seizure medication, what are you seeing for the IVI? What are you seeing for the intranasal dose? What you're seeing is the milliliters, right? And it's tied to a protocol. So that's one of what we call our first pillars of medication safety is that you need, like the five rights. You need the right dose with the right protocol. Obviously, in EMS, it's easier for the right patient because you're usually just with one, but in MCIs, it might be different. But you're also seeing the cognitive offload of that milliliter dosage on there. What happens in just an AI solution is that it will tell you the dose, but it will say give 1 microgram per kilogram for fentanyl, right? That may be a piece of information that you didn't know, but then you still have to go through all the cognitive steps of doing that calculation in an emergency, potentially at 3 a.m., potentially with mom and dad, hovering over you over a pediatric patient. And all those environmental factors together is what causes errors. So by putting our AI solution on top of the OneDose platform and allowing it to control it, allowing it to voice, allowing it to document, we really are seeing kind of an unlock here in which it combines the best of both worlds. It combines all the workflow things that we've put so much time and effort into developing, protocol-based dosing, the EMAC process, pediatric, referencing before you get on scene. Everything that we've done for medication safety now has a layer of intelligence on top of it. So you're getting the workflow cognitive offload, but you're also getting the benefit of having a second almost small brain on scene there with you. I do want to leave some time for questions here, but I'll kind of pass it to either Colton or Chris first. Any last words about as we wrap up here before we get to some questions?
Yeah, one thing I have for Colton, I mean, I know this is all great, and OneDose exists to reduce that pressure, verifies the math and aligns the protocols and stuff like that. So again, talking about the future of where this V2 is, where do you see like TCD diagnosis where we're using like eBridge and CarePoint and Pulsera for like downstreaming and stuff like that, Colton?
Yeah, we've actually had preliminary conversations and we see it being very complementary. So the best part about what we're doing with our assistant is we've also integrated this into our LPR. So LPR is our living patient record. It is non-PHI, so none of this can be tied to a patient, but it does hold the interventions of what happened to this patient. And this can all be publicly accessible via a direct link. So working with other partners like those Pulseras or General Devices with eBridge that can actually flow into their platform and live with the patient to know directly which interventions happen in those time critical and really critical situations where there's a lot of interventions done pre-hospital and having that transfer from pre-hospital to hospital to be able to quickly get that instead of taking down the back of the hand as well.
Excellent. Does anybody else
So
have
we
anything?
do have a few questions that I see coming on here. So one of the first questions, does the intrinsic LLM, meaning large language models such as OpenAI, begin to learn users so the answers become more tailored to the more you use it? Or does it learn an organization's protocol? Well, it actually it learns based off of the protocol sets that you put in there. It does have a feedback loop for admins to see the questions that are asked and to make sure that there's a QA/QI on the answers if needed. So we don't store your information without your permission. Obviously, the more questions we have, the better we can train our system. But as we do continue to have that LLM learn the protocol set, the questions also come in. Colton, I heard you clear your throat. I'm assuming you wanted some of that question as well.
Yeah, and expanding on that as well is really building out the memory aspect of it. So, along with hosting all that information, which comes from your direct medical direction, Admins are actually able to customize the memory that is relevant to your organization direct. And that can be at the organization level, such as the agency, where you can continually add background information that is vital to the LLM to expand on additional reasoning. It can also be implemented at the user level with how you actually like to interface with the assistant as well. Where if you want it shorter, you want it more robust, you only utilize it for medication dosage questions and stuff like that.
Thank you. And another question, when it comes to documentation, what information is actually uploaded to the EPCR? So that's a great question, especially with our voice-to-voice documentation and ambient sound documentation that's continuing to be developed. Um, Nemesis fields are on the table. So if there is a Nemesis field, it can be pushed to it, including your narration and everything like that. I will say it depends on the EPCR partnership we have. Some EPCRs have more Nemesis fields you can push to, some have less. Some have would either just us upload a transcript of the meeting and have their AI on their side parse everything out and plug it in. So each EPCR has a unique workflow, and that's definitely something we've learned. Our goal is to build the best integration with each EPCR possible, right? So it's going to look a little different depending upon each one, which one you're talking about. But everything that's a Nemesis field is definitely on the table to get pushed to.
I got a quick question, and it's a little off the cuff. If I take a picture of something like an EKG or medications, will it import it, cross-check it, and tell me a certain medication that I give it, whether it's contraindicated, or if and or it will document that as well?
Yeah, that is a great question. So pictures are a little bit more complicated, especially of EKGs, because the FDA's guidance on what is allowed to be clinical decision support and what is allowed to be, or what needs to be like a medical device is the term, even though it's a software, they'll still call it a medical device. So we're working through how we can kind of filter out what questions can be answered and which ones cannot. So it's less of a functionality thing of, hey, we could turn on pictures and have them upload and have them process. But it's like, well, we have to make sure that if it's an EKG, that it gives, any feedback that it would give would be within the bounds of what the FDA can ask. On the other side of things, your brain's going directly to the right answer. And I know we're a couple minutes over, so I'll leave everyone with this. As AI brings in more unstructured information, unstructured meaning just pieces of data that humans would be able to process as well, it becomes more powerful. So right now we're looking at integrations with pharmaceutical medication prescriptions, right? Do patients have that? We're looking at integrations with monitors. We're looking at with integrations with past patient history. We're looking at integrations with things like WikiEM. And as you start building out this stack from where we start with protocols and dosing and everything like that to a potential place in which every piece of that patient's history is automatically uploaded to the LLM, and you can ask it questions of, does my patient have any um, heart related issues, or are they on any prescription medications, or when's the last time they're in the hospital? The world becomes a really interesting place in order to provide the best care for patient. um, we're going to go ahead and stop there. And any other questions, you can feel free to reach out. Lydia, do we have a way to get any more of these questions that we could follow up on afterwards?
Yeah, we do have this blocked off until 3. So I do see there is one more question if we do want to answer it.
Okay. Oh,
If
perfect.
you want to, I'll read it. So if this is something that we, move ahead with our service, sounds like we, have an agency on here that's thinking about OneDose. When it comes to setting it up, what kind of support is there from startup to later down the line, if there's any issues?
Yeah, that's another good question. So customer success, that what we found being new to this space is probably one of the more important things that you could possibly do, right? So in this case, the onboarding process, we get a full hands on deck team. You have obviously your sales rep, but you also have a clinical person that comes and helps you build out your platform. That's either a paramedic or a medical doctor. You have an onboarding specialist slash engineer that helps you with your integrations, with your EPCRs to your to your alerting softwares like Pulsera, LifeNet, Triage, one of those GE Bridge from General Devices, and so on and so forth. And then after it's actually onboarded, you have continued customer support. We have 24/7 support, ticket support. Usually we give you one of our executives' phone numbers so you can reach directly out to us if something comes up. And safe to say, and one of the things we take most pride in is that there's definitely no communication gaps. You're always going to have as much support as you can probably ever want.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that too, I do the marketing here at OneDose and I create a web page for each agency in each region with lots of resources, videos, trainings, and then there is unlimited training. So, when we get started, if, we run through some stuff with you and you're like, hey, we actually have more questions, or, half the agency's picking it up, the other half isn't, can we do another training? That's something that we just kind of bake into everything, just to make sure that you have the support that you need. But that looks like that's all the questions. So if there's anything else that comes up, you can go to our website www.mywondose.com, and or you can email us at sales@mywondose.com or support@mywondose.com. Either way, we'd be happy to hear from you, answer your questions. We're very accessible, or at least we try to be. And we're so happy that, everyone was able to hop on today. So thanks, guys.